Give her a round of applause.
Can you hear me okay? Do I have to talk louder? I would prefer not to. Okay, great. So, this is my first technical talk. Take it easy, all right? All right, so my name is Jenessa White. I'm a front-end developer at Software for Good, which is a local company here. And tonight we're going to do an intro to Gatsby.js, which is a static site generator. It's built on React, and it means it's really, really flexible. You can use, you can get your data from an API, database, various CMS platforms. You can use this as like a front end for a headless WordPress if you really wanted to do that to yourself. Or you could use markdown files, which is what we're going to use today. And it uses GraphQL as its query language to get your data. And it comes with a default starter, which is a super, super blank site with 2 pages. It also comes with other starters, which you can think of like themes for like Shopify or WordPress. So you can have like a blog theme or like a restaurant website theme that will help you get started a little bit faster. So we're going to build a blog tonight because blogs are usually super simple for people to conceptualize. You know, you need like a landing page with all the blog post listings and then a single blog post template. Plus, I want to kind of redo my personal site, so this kind of made it easier for me. I can knock out 2 things with 1 site, which efficiency, y'all. All right, so this project is super simple. It's got 4 pages. You got your home page, your about page, a portfolio page, and then your blog page, which will have the listing of the blog posts. And then under that blog page, you'll have, of course, each individual blog. I want to use Markdown to write my blog posts, so that way I can just push up a new post to my GitHub repo at any point, and I could write it out super easy versus trying to make a new HTML file or a new JavaScript file and worrying about all of that stuff. For Gatsby, Gatsby requires Node on your laptop, and then you can either use Yarn or NPM. I prefer Yarn, so that's what I'm going to use tonight. And then you need to install the Gatsby CLI. All right, so spinning up a site. We're not going to live code because I don't want y'all to see how bad of a speller I am. So I have everything already in here, and I'm just going to do it that way. All right. So when you spin up a Gatsby site, you're going to see kind of a main structure for how they do their sites. You'll see a source directory, which has components, images, and pages. These are the 3 that come with Gatsby, and then I created the posts and templates because we're going to use that for some stuff later on. And then Gatsby also comes with 4 main files for their APIs. So you get a Gatsby browser.js, a Gatsby config.js, a Gatsby node.js, and a Gatsby SSR, which is server-side rendering.js. And so each time you want to use a Gatsby API, it goes into the correlating file. So if we're going to use a node API, it goes into Gatsby node. Any configuration stuff goes here, browser, SSR, et cetera, et cetera. You cannot change the names of these files, otherwise Gatsby will not be able to read the information. Okay. So when you spin up a Gatsby site, this is the default starter that you'll get. It comes with 2 pages linked in and a couple links to show you just how the linking between the sites works, which is nice. I love Game of Thrones, so there's going to be a couple of those in here. So this is the project structure, so you can see it a little bit bigger. It also comes with like standard stuff, like it comes with a prettier file, get, ignore, node modules, which, yay, JavaScript. And then it comes with also like your README and a license file. So the main thing that we're going to focus on tonight as far as the Gatsby config file or Gatsby specific files is the Gatsby config. And there's 2 sections that are the most important in this. And it's going to be your site metadata, which gives you a lot of SEO stuff, and it also gives you a lot of ways that you can add new things to your scheme for your GraphQL stuff. And then plugins, which are not as bad as WordPress plugins. and I can talk about WordPress because I have to do it every day. So the plugins you get when you spin up a Gatsby site are React Helmet, which is used for SEO, Gatsby Source File System, Gatsby Transformer Sharp, which is for images, and then Gatsby Plugin Manifest, which is to help if you're doing more of like a PWA and you need some offline capabilities. So this is where you would define any plugins and their options that you're going to use on that site. And so I can show you what that looks like. So you see, what is this? Get out of here. This one. All right, so you can see here, you can see site metadata, and then you have your title, which is Gatsby Default Starter. And you can see that up here, which is reading from the meta tags, but also here. And if we were to go in and change that out, so we can put like cool, see, this is why I don't live code. Save that, and then updates here and up here. So you only need to update your title in one place, and then all of your meta descriptions, all that stuff is updated automatically everywhere. And then you have like your description, author, and you would build these, you would use these to build out your meta tags out in your components folder, and then your SEO file. So you can see where all of that information is getting pulled in from. So Gatsby does pages really well. You can create a new page relatively easily. All you really need to do is go into your pages directory and create a new file. So if you open up your pages folder, you'll see you have like a 404 page that it comes with. It comes with an index page and a page 2. Those are those two pages that we saw originally. And then I created like this about page, which is just a little concept that we're exporting. And then you'll notice that lowercase, and then like if you look at this one, says -new. Those are what it's going to use for the slugs. So you need to be super careful about how you are naming your files in Gatsby, because if you name it like about with like title case about page, then that's going to be your slug, not what's here, and you're not defining it anywhere else. So when you create a new page, you'll have, oh my gosh, what is Google Slides doing? So you create a new page, you'll be able to go like about, and you'll be able to see whatever you've created there. But Gatsby also uses components, which are something that we're really familiar with in React. And we're going to use that to create a header for our site, because we're going to need something to navigate the site. Otherwise, we'll be typing in slugs all day long, and nobody wants to do that. So you could do something really easy and hard code it, because it's a really, really small site. So you could do something like this. But if you're doing a larger site and you want to define your link somewhere and then just run it through like a map, this would not work. So we're going to go through here, and we're going to go to our config file, and we're going to define something called menu items, and we're going to put that right under our site metadata just to easily find it later. And menu items is going to be an array of objects, and in each object you're going to put the name that you want to be displayed in your menu, in your navigation, and then the link, which is going to be what we pass to the link, the actual link, for the path that it'll hit. So when you are updating your Gatsby config, you want to restart your dev server, because it needs to update the schema for your GraphQL, and it can't do that if it's running. So you want to restart it every time, which can be a little bit tedious, but in the long run, it's much better. And then once you do restart it, you can go to your layout, and you'll be able to update your title query, your site query, and you'll be able to look for something called menu items, which has a name and a link, which is what we defined in our Gatsby config. Now, how it gets this information is through GraphQL, which is, again, it's a query language that it uses. And what's great about GraphQL is that you can write a query and only fetch the data that you need. You don't have to get back everything and then sort through it. So if you want to learn more about why they chose GraphQL or go really in depth, I really, really recommend you check out their documentation. It's honestly some of the best documentation I've seen for any static site generator that I've used, and it's honestly better than React's documentation, but that's neither here nor there. So when you restart your dev server, you'll be able to go to localhost 8000/triple_GraphQL, and you'll be able to use this thing called GraphQL, which allows you to test out different queries and make sure that the data that you need is where you expect it to be. So when you're writing a GraphQL query, oh, there we go, that's much better. You see everything lives under site, and then since we put our menu items under site metadata, we're going to query site metadata and then specifically ask just for the menu items here. And then when you run that query, you'll see all of the things that we defined and what that is going to look like. So this exact structure is what the JSON will look like when we go into our project and try to get those items. So when we go into layout and we have our menu items, and then we can pass those menu items into our header through a prop, just like we would do in any other React component. Then when we go to our actual header, we make sure we declare it here. And then instead of using this h1 tag with just our site title in it, we can do something like this and map over the menu items that we're passing in, give it a key for each link, and then dynamically add any of the information, and then only define our styles once. And then, of course, you could pull out those styles into a separate file and put a class name here instead. And then if we go back to our site, you'll see that we have our links going to all of our different pages. It's pretty quick. All right, so the blog part, which is obviously the most important part of this specific talk. So if I want to write my blog in Markdown, that would be all well and good, but Gatsby doesn't by default know what to do with a Markdown file. We have to tell it what to do. So we have to use something called a transformer plugin, which transforms our Markdown into our HTML that we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a folder called posts, and we're going to have that right underneath source. And then each blog post, and you can set this up a couple different ways. I just did it this way because this is the first way I learned how to do it. Each blog post goes into its own folder, and each folder has an index.markdown, or .md, which is a markdown file. You could set it up where you could just have a post folder and then name each markdown file what you want the post name to be, title to be. But I like this. I like this way a little bit better because then I can sort the files a little bit easier. And then in each markdown file, you're going to have this intro block, which is called the front matter, and you're going to pass it a path, a title, and a date. A path is going to be required because that's how it knows what URL to serve it at. And then the title, you're going to want a title for your blog. Otherwise, how would they know what they were reading? And then a date, and then any markdown that you want to write. And so what's cool about Gatsby is there are different ways that you can write markdown. So there's like GitHub flavored markdown, which is apparently a thing that I learned about. But this plugin right here, Transformer Remark, can read all of it. It will transform whatever kind of markdown that you want to use into your HTML. So we add these to this plugin here, and then we set an option for Gatsby source file system, which tells it, hey, we're going to be using something called posts, and we need you to read that folder to get that information. So now that we have posts, we need to make sure that we can query them. And you'll see that when we run markdown remark, it looks for that front matter, which is that intro block of text in our markdown file. And it says, okay, now that I know you have front matter, what are the three things that you put in there? We put in a title, a path, and a date. And then if we run this query, we're going to get a title, a path, and a date. And if we wanted to return all of the blog posts that we had, we would just use all markdown remark, and it would be under what's called, you'll see later, it's called edges and then node, and that would be an array of objects of all of your different blogs. Since we only have one, we only need to do one markdown remark just so that we can see this initial one. So now that we have this file, this blog, we need a template to put it in, because although we're writing out this markdown file, if Gatsby doesn't have a template to read it from, then it's useless. So to create a template, we're going to do something in our Gatsby-node file. And that's going to be using the Gatsby node API called create page. So Gatsby uses Redux under the hood, which if you're familiar with React, you're probably familiar with Redux. It's for state management, and it has a bunch of different actions. So in your Gatsby node file, you can access those actions through here, and you just define which one you're looking for, and then we're going to define our blog post template that we're going to use using path resolve, and then you pass the path of the template file that you need, which lives under templates, and then it's just this file right here. So Gatsby the node API returns a promise. So you need to pass in your GraphQL query string, which is, again, that all markdown remark that I mentioned earlier, which is going to give you all of the different blog posts that you've written in whatever specified folder that you defined. And you can pass in, to GraphQL, you can pass in different options. You can sort it based on whatever field, and you can do ascending or descending order, and you can also limit the query. So if you wanted to do 1,000, 10,000, or just the top two the two latest posts, you could do that here. And then edges and node. So this is what will return each single blog post. And then again, that front matter is that initial block in the index that markdown. And then the path is what is required by create page to create each individual page for your website. So this returns a promise, which will give you your resulting data, and we're going to loop over each node in that edges array and create a page for each one of those. And so the component is just the template that we created in that other file, and then the path is the path that we get back from our GraphQL query. And then what's really nice is you can pass any other context of data that you need into create page. So if you had some other query that you needed to run in conjunction to this, and you needed to pass, I don't know, whatever to your blog, it's your blog, you can do whatever you want. You could do that right here, and you could create an object of hundreds of things. So this is what your template file could look like. So you define a template, you're passing in the data, which is going to be that markdown remark, which is that single blog post. And then that's going to have your front matter, and then the HTML, which is the content of that post. So that's going to be anything in this section, anything under these last three dashes. And then you can lay this out according to whatever you want. So you can just build out your web page, your template, and you can pass it the title, the date, which is getting it from the front matter, and then your HTML content gets set dangerously, which is my favorite thing about HTML, this right here. So you use that to set your HTML, and this is where the data gets defined. So you're passing in data up here, and that gets defined by your GraphQL query here. So you know exactly what you're getting back, and you're not getting back any more or any less, because I think there's 12 different things that you could return from markdown remark, but we're only caring about these two specific things. So then, if I wanted to go to like blog and our new blog, you can see this is what that template ends up looking like. So you have your title, the date, which we formatted, and then any of that markdown content working just like it should on an HTML page. All right, so the last thing that we need to make sure that we do is to bring it together. So we have this beautiful, beautiful blog post, but if you go to blog, you can't see any of your blog posts. So while you have that information ready, you need to link it to your blog. So this is what that could look like. You can do this a bunch of different ways. But again, you start with your GraphQL query. So again, we're getting all of our markdown, all of our transformed markdown. We can get a total count, and then we can use edges, again, which is going to be that array of each individual post, and we can get any of the specific information. So I'm going to get the ID because I need that for my key. We need a unique identifier, so get that from my key, and then we're going to use that front matter again, which is the title, date, and then you can format that string to however you want because that's defined in your Gatsby-node file. And then you have your path, and then you can also get the excerpt, which is going to be the first, I think it's 100 characters. Don't quote me on that. And then you're going to pass that information into your blog layout, and then you can see we're getting that total count that we requested, and you can do something like this where you can show people how many posts you have, and then we're going to map over the edges, which is an array of each individual object, an array of each individual blog post, and then we're using that node.id that we requested, the front matter path, which is going to be how we get linked to the actual blog post itself, the title, the date, and then the excerpt. So let's rename this to Volt. And there we go. Oh, I should probably restart this. There we go. And then you can see it's going to pull in all of your blog posts. So if we created a new one, we create a new blog post. And let's rename our folder. It's going to show up right there. All right? And that's it. That's how fast you can spin up a new blog with Gatsby. Anybody have any questions? No? Great. Awesome. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Yep. Yeah, so I have my actual one that does not look this bad. You deploy it on like Netlify, GitHub pages, GitLab pages, I don't know what they call it. You can host it pretty much anywhere, and you literally just run yarn build, and it creates a. If you just run like yarn build to get the compiled build assets, that, and how that works, so.
Sorry, any other questions? I have this. Not to repeat.
Hi. Okay, so that's really cool to make a blog and stuff. Is there any way to add like email that you can send an email to this or anything like that without having a backend, like kind of like the way this is right now?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not gonna even pretend.
Questions? Anybody? Do you want to look about once?
I'm cool with no questions.
Sorry.
You said you work in WordPress a lot. Like
Yeah.
your day job.
Mm-hmm.
As like a blogging platform, do you prefer this to WordPress?
So I would prefer this to build the front end of it, but a lot of our clients are really, really used to the WordPress dashboard and what that looks like and how it works. And since you can use WordPress as a REST API, you can get a REST API out of it, this seems like a great thing for me to use because I can allow them to use WordPress and then not have to worry about writing like blade templates and all the crazy plugin stuff that happens in WordPress, and I could just use this to create the front end, which will be a lot faster. So.
Hey,
Hi.
Another WordPress question.
Oh no.
So, WordPress does provide the REST APIs, but does it provide any help in order to integrate with GraphQL better? Do you have to do that yourself?
You have to do that yourself.
Okay.
There is a plugin though.
Of course. Plugins on plugins. No more questions? Great. All right.
No more questions?
Yes.
All right, let's give a round of applause to Jenessa.